Is Mr. Ronan here again, and this is the video where I'm finally gonna try talking about how you're meant to zone with Rain. Because a pretty common notice of people playing Rain is that with this Premier Zoner, they're having quite a hard time zoning people out. Or even just trying to zone at all, or not getting zoned out. And yes, to all these comments, I respond, yes. It is quite hard to zone with Rain, and against a lot of characters, it's quite hard to not get zoned out. So in this video, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna show you how to make Rain zoning completely oppressive and show you the light of how amazing it is, but this is just gonna be a guide as to how to approach his zoning to try to make the most of this Premier Zoner's toolkit. So just some notes at the beginning before we go into what you should be doing. Rain zoning is very not oppressive. It's not like people kind of made jokes that he was Wetrion, he was Wet Cetrion, but he doesn't have any kind of lockdown or gotcha moments in his zoning. Everything is above 30 frames startup, so everything is completely reactable, and everything that he throws out does not have any advantageous frame data. You can hit someone with a projectile from full screen and you'll be... He's not blocking, is he? You'll be +1 or +2 at the most if I land one of these whirlpools. You're like, oh look, I can get some plus frames with my whirlpool if I place this down. But being +2 to a zoner whose fastest projectiles are 30 frames means nothing. It's like, oh, thank goodness for those +2 frames, now this 34 frame projectile leaves only 32 frames for the opponent to act before it comes out. Like, it doesn't mean anything. So when you're zoning with Rain, there's no gotcha moments, there's no way to lock the opponent down, there's no way to make it oppressive. It's just, you have to try and make the most of any distance that you accidentally build with the end of your combos to either attempt to build more distance by cancelling these backwards, or to try to get some chip damage, or to make some hard reads that, like, if the opponent jumps, I will hit them with this, and then some of your projectiles, like for example this one and this one, actually lead to good situations when you land them. So like this one, if you make the hard read from something and actually land it, you get to jump in and go for a full combo. And this one has so much knockdown that you can actually set up a really meaty version of that one. So there's a few winning cases in Rain zoning, but most of the time there's no winning, there's just trying. So let's talk about how you should approach it. So from when you're around this distance, you know, outside of any kind of neutral button or anything, your zoning is meant to kind of dominate. But even from this range, I wouldn't recommend actually throwing out any projectiles. If the opponent is trying to get closer or like trying to build space on you by dashing on the floor, you can throw out a long geyser. That is probably the only thing I'd recommend throwing at this range, because it can catch the opponent off guard trying to dash in or do some kind of projectile or long reaching button of their own. I don't recommend using this as an anti-air from any distance except like full screen, because it's so slow and has a ridiculous amount of recovery. I don't know what that 9 frames of recovery is, that's capped. I guess that's the recovery once it's left the screen. But he's a great down 2, just use that if the opponent jumps. But at this range, yeah, you're not zoning, you're just either choosing to go in or choosing to go out. And to go out, there are 2 options you have. And these 2 things are probably the best parts about his zoning toolkit. So cancelling his projectile into the backdash is one of the best parts of his zoning, because you can actually do it surprisingly quick. Frame data wise, it's not quick at all, but it builds a surprisingly good amount of distance. Like just with a few of these, you can make yourself full screen, and you can actually keep up with an opponent trying to dash in on you. Like if they're trying to dash in, and then like also watch out for you actually throwing the projectile, you can actually build distance by doing this backwards. And then, of course, the opponent isn't going to be just straight dashing in, because you always have the chance of just actually throwing it out. And then you can do some like fake out stuff where you do it, and then hold it, and then dash it, or hold it the whole way. And this is where there's a little bit of teeth to his zoning. So when you're around this distance, I recommend just faking out projectiles to keep yourself a lot safer, because if you throw this, and the opponent ducks, or they jump, you're going to die. It has a lot of recovery, it's very slow. They can even just react to this and use an armor attack. Most armor attacks, like Baraka's slide, Rain's armor attack will hit by here. A lot of armor attacks are reactable to stuff like this, so you just can't throw your projectiles from this range, I'm sorry. So you do this, you cancel to build more distance to fake out, and sometimes you actually throw it. And the other option is if you think, this is particularly a Combat League recommendation, people love to jump when you're at around this distance because it's a perfect range to just go, oh look, I can do this. This is the training mode round start where I can just jump in and get my combo that I've practiced 10 times going. So people love to jump at this distance, which means that that is actually kind of your best zoning tool at this range. So you can throw it at like the normal distance or the far distance, and it'll blast the opponent completely full screen. So if you do like zoning, perfect, you're full screen. And as we mentioned, this lets you set up a very, very meaty one of your portals, so you can, your whirlpool, so you can get this cloud, summon the whirlpool, and then they block the very meaty one. Sometimes it doesn't hit in training mode for some reason. But then they block that, and then because they block the very meaty whirlpool, it jails into another one of the clouds, then you get some chip damage. And there you go. Now your zoning has actually started, but as you can see, when you land that one on block, now you're 0, and now you're back to square 1. So we're actually full screen this time. What are we doing from full screen? Well, now, you never have frame advantage with rain. Anytime the opponent blocks a projectile, it doesn't matter, you have no advantage. Think of every time you do something, you're negative 30. Doesn't matter if you're plus 2, you're negative 30 because everything you do is so slow. So from this distance, it really depends on what opponent you're fighting against. If you're against someone with a teleport or a projectile or something, you want to be doing a lot of quick fake stuff. So I can be still doing my fake projectiles because maybe they're trying to dash in and I keep building space while they dash at me, and sometimes I throw it out. Or sometimes I can dash in and then like go for a jump in and catch them off guard. That actually works a surprising amount of the time. So you don't want to use this projectile on its own, or just throw this out like predictably, or this one predictably, or this one predictably, against an opponent who has a teleport or a projectile of their own, because you'll just get beat. You'll get zoned out and you'll cry. So when you're at this distance, what do? Well, you kind of just pretend to zone. You do these cancels, sometimes throw it out, and then you also do stuff like this. Throw out a portal. This is very quick. It can kind of bait people into going for their teleports or whatever. And putting a portal on screen is always good for rain, because, you move around a bunch while you're fighting, and your opponent chases you down, you run away or whatever. The portal might end up in a good position, and it's just very quick. You can throw it out, and it's good to have them on the screen. May as well do it if you're trying to bait the opponent and put a portal on the screen at the same time. Also, we can now place our bubble shield, which stays there for about, a bit over a second, and absorbs some projectiles. I think it only absorbs 2. So there are matchups where it is completely not useless, like Reiko or Raiden, because they can just do their multi-hitting projectiles and beat your ass. But doing stuff like this is good because it does technically give you a bit of advantage. You get this movement advantage with the portal, you get this anti-zoning advantage, but you're not leaving yourself extremely, punishably baitable by any sort of projectile or teleport. And then, when you're doing stuff like this, maybe they have teleport behind you, then you get to do a full combo punish, that's great. And now they'll be a little less antsy to throw out their projectiles and stuff, and now when you put up the shield, you can start throwing your stuff. But I do recommend the best thing from this screen, now we're in, the next case. The next case is where your opponent isn't doing YOLO teleports and outzoning you, because you've shown them that their teleports will get punished because you're actually just doing safe things with not much recovery, you're baiting them a lot, and you're absorbing some of their projectiles with this thing. Now that I can throw my own projectiles, what am I gonna do? And once again, the 2 best zoning tools he has that are his win cases, you could say, in parentheses, is Weather Ball from the Storm Cloud and placing the Whirlpool on the screen. That's the best stuff he can do. So getting this Storm Cloud, just the same as before, is really good because no matter where you hit it on the screen, it has this absurd amount of hit advantage, where you can easily place a very meaty Whirlpool on the screen, and while that's on the screen, then you can do a little bit of zoning because the opponent's going to be a bit scared, so you can throw another 2 of these while that's on the screen. So you can either place it in front of them to stop them coming for you, or you can use the hit advantage just to place it at their feet so they have to block it. And then placing this is also a good zoning tool from full screen, hopefully because you don't get punished, and if they do get hit by it, even from full screen, hey, we get to go in, we're getting combos, now we're pretending to be a rushdown guy. And yeah, these are the main two things you want to be using when you are actually doing your zoning and you're not getting zoned out. We'll also be doing in a bunch of like random of these as well, because we'll still be doing like interspaced in between trying to use our actual good tools. We want to keep using this stuff that keeps us safe, throw out random projectiles, cancel them, get out of the way, put up our shield, and then when we think that the opponent might jump or like just be calm for a second, then we throw out our win conditions. This thing, which if it does hit, gives a huge knockdown, or if we think they're just being patient, we can place this to stop them coming for us, or to just catch their toes and get a combo. And this Storm Cloud, by the way, is really good, like we mentioned, even from this range. The same applies, it's good for people who try to jump in to close the distance, because this downward angle catches jumpers super easily. So if they're trying to jump over stuff like this, or this, because it's pretty tempting to jump over it, then throwing out some Storm Clouds will catch them. So yeah, that's kind of the basis of his zoning stuff. But you might notice, yeah, even though we can do that, there's still not much teeth there, and that's where you really have to use Kameos to make his zoning any kind of scary or bitey. I think there are like 3 ways you can make his zoning better, either by using Kameos that like kind of contribute to his zoning, like Stryker here or any kind of ambush projectile can let me make my zoning a lot more unpredictable. You can also use just like regular projectiles, like Sareena's Ford cameo. That just gives him a proper projectile that's not 30 frames of startup, so you can throw out something actually quick, and with quick recovery, well, imagine that. So you can make his zoning better by choosing projectile cameos, but I really like using ambush cameos like Stryker, because now when I'm doing this cancel stuff, I can be like canceling and throwing out like Stryker. Whoops. And yeah, having the grenades like interspersed in between my actual zoning makes my zoning kind of a lot more oppressive in my opinion, because not only are they trying to see if I cancel my projectile, they're also trying to see if Stryker's coming on the screen to throw a random projectile in between my projectiles. And yeah, there's a bunch of applications that this can have, like I can now like more consistently get my fully charged projectile, because if my ambush projectile hits the opponent before this fully charged one, well then I get the fully charged projectile. Also, if I cancel it and they get hit by the thing, I can still cancel and get another projectile afterwards, which is pretty cool. Even this Storm Cloud, so I get that awesome advantage from Stryker hitting his grenade. That's pretty cool. Also, if the opponent is just, very patient and they block a lot of my projectiles, now when I throw my projectiles, I can actually have them B+, even this one. So the opponent actually has to respect my projectiles once they block them, which is pretty normal for zoners, but not for Rain. But yeah, now that I have Stryker throwing out these grenades afterwards, they don't feel like they can just dash in on me or jump in on and do something crazy, because I'm so minus after everything. Now, I actually have a little bit of, whoops, teeth and plus frames to my zoning, because it will either, like, kind of just be random projectiles that come out in between my cancels. It'll either let me combo into my fully charged projectile, or just actually make me plus after my projectiles. So yeah, ambush cameos are one way to make our zoning a bunch better. And the other option is to use cameos like Scorpion or Goro, who actually give your zoning a bit of teeth, a bit of damage, because now when I throw my projectiles... Oops, he's up blocking. If I make the read that the opponent is actually going to get hit by one of my projectiles, well, I can just call out Scorpion and have him do his up breath flame, whatever that's called. And I'm actually just getting a full combo after every one of my projectiles now. It's not huge damage, and I'm sure you can do a little bit more than that. But the fact that you're getting anything, a nice knockdown, some more damage off of these projectiles, which are just kind of crap, is really nice. So this applies off of this, it applies off of this, of course. It also applies even like from full screen from this, because now you can call him out and combo it into itself, which isn't tons of damage, but it's nearly 200 damage, and you still get a great knockdown to set up your whirlpool for some more plus frames in your zoning. So I would say that's kind of a win. You do have to time it though, because Scorpion gives you so much advantage. But see? Scorpion just makes it so your zoning actually leads to something, but he doesn't make your zoning better, because even though he is an ambush, they're aerial things, so they won't hit an opponent that's on the ground. So unlike Stryker, who can like kind of throw projectiles in between your projectiles, Scorpion isn't going to make your zoning better, it's just going to make your zoning more damaging when it actually does work. And one thing to note though that is kind of cool about this is, you know, when you're throwing projectiles like this or like this, your very obvious weakness is that the opponent can just jump. So if I'm throwing this out and I call Scorpion out at the same time, I either get a combo if it hits, or if they jump, there's a good chance that Scorpion is going to hit the opponent out of the air. Let's see, it's kind of awkward to show in training mode, but let's see if we can get that to work. So if I throw this and at a time that they don't get hit by my projectile, see, he gets hit out of the air. It's not totally consistent because different angles, whatever, but there's a good chance that Scorpion might actually hit them out of the air. So you get to cover the straight angle and the air angle thanks to Scorpion's up breath. So that is another way you can make your zoning a bit better with Rain. And the last option, and I think possibly the best option if you actually want to zone out your opponents and consistently zone, is to actually use Sub-Zero, particularly if you're in these bad matchups like Reiko or Raiden with the multi-hitting projectiles. You kind of just need Sub-Zero. And of course, the main thing that is useful here is going to be his Ice Shield. Let's also stop you jumping. So now while I'm zoning, I can have Sub-Zero give me the Ice Shield, so I don't have to put up this pathetic little portal here. Because if I get Reiko to throw his projectiles... Hello? There we go. So now I can have him throw my projectiles. As you can see, if I put up the shield, it only absorbs 2 of the projectiles and the last one goes through. And if he like enhances it, then he throws like 6 or something and I get hit by a bunch of projectiles. So the shield's just not good against Reiko. But if I have sub out, now any kind of projectile, including like annoying things like Scorpion Spear, just don't matter to me, and I can actually finally throw out some of my projectiles on my own, no matter what he's doing. I can throw out this slow stuff. It doesn't matter what he does, as long as I have Sub-Zero called out kind of in a relatively recent period, I can actually finally zone, and the only thing I have to be scared of are teleports. And you do still have to worry about teleports, so you do still have to do some cancels and stuff, to do some baiting, place some portals on the screen, maybe put this up just for fun to bait them into thinking you're throwing a projectile, but this one's really the best for baiting projectile teleports. But yeah, throw this out. Now anytime we're going into our zoning, we actually can zone and not get zoned out. Yahoo! Isn't that so fun? And just, this doesn't relate to the, projectile invulnerability, but Sub-Zero actually has another way that he makes your zoning kind of better, and that's his cold shoulder. Okay, bro, can you block? After my block strings, going into his cold shoulder is pretty similar to Frost, to be honest. It pushes the opponent a decent distance away, and depending on when it hits the opponent, it can be like +1, or if it's at like slightly further distances, it can be like a bit more plus than that. Maybe after... I'm pushed pretty far away, and the thing, it's kind of plus. You push the opponent away, it can also be used as a wake up, which, you know, Rain having a free wake up that pushes the opponent away and is plus. Sounds pretty handy. So having this way to push the opponent out, particularly in matchups that you actually like zoning, is going to be very handy. So now, with Sub, we are a master zoner that can actually use this flowchart of zoning that we've developed and not get zoned out. And also, it just happens to be that Sub-Zero also gives Rain the best offense. So you become a rushdown monster and zoning monster. Thank you, Sub-Zero. But yeah. That's all there really is to Rain zoning. It can work, but you have to be a lot more active than you would expect. You're certainly no Wetrion. You have to do a lot of these cancels, which is, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, like, canceling this into down 2. for like people that you know are jumping over. That's a pretty good tactic as well. But yeah, just to quickly summarize, when you're at this kind of distance just outside the range of buttons, you still don't want to throw projectiles because they're too slow. So you want to do some retreating cancels, occasionally actually throw it out, and sometimes hold it down, see if you can get the fully charged one, but do a lot of these retreating cancels. They're pretty good, and that's what makes people actually scared of your zoning, because it's unpredictable. And then your only win conditions when you're zoning are throwing this for the big knockdown into a very meaty whirlpool, or just having the time to throw out a whirlpool because the opponent either stays still, or they accidentally walk into it, or they do a predictable jump, which you can down 2 or anti-air. And then the only way to make your zoning actually have teeth is to give yourself a cameo with projectiles like Sareena or Stryker to just help you zone, or pick a projectile combo extending projectile like Scorpion or Goro, or pick Sub-Zero, who lets you actually zone without getting zoned out. So yeah, that's rain zoning. Hopefully this helps, and let me know if it does. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.